Hi, and welcome to my live for today. Today, I want to talk to you about getting stuck in our emotions and how this can happen. Not all the time, it doesn't happen all the time this way, but how I've noticed that this happens for me. And one of the things I've noticed about it, and therefore something you can change about it. So, the first thing I want to say is that sometimes it's really interesting to look at how we express ourselves around our emotions and how, for want of a better word, existential we can be about that. How we can talk about how we express our emotions in terms of, I am sad, I am nervous, I am afraid, I am apprehensive. And we use that am word. We use it, and that am word is all about being. It's I'm trying to think of the right which element of the verb it is, but it's part of the verb to be. I am, and it's the first person, whatever it is. Can you tell how much I know my English right now? And we phrase it that way. But the truth is, are we? And if we put the word feeling in there, would it change how that feeling felt? By the way, let me know if you're out there. It would be lovely. Just give me a hi, because in this new setup for Facebook Live, I don't get to see who's watching. So it'd be lovely to know who's out there. And I will say hi back if I see it. What would feel different instead of saying, I am feeling nervous? Sorry, I am nervous. Say, I'm feeling nervous. For me, what that does is it distances us from that emotion, and it gives credibility to the idea that that emotion is transitory. When we say I am and it becomes part of who we are, then for me that feels heavier and harder to shift. It's like saying I'm stressed. If we say I'm feeling stressed, then it's almost like the solution to that feeling comes up out of that consideration. So I'm feeling stressed. What can I do about it? But if we say I am stressed, it's like we kind of sit stuck in the mud with that emotion. And so how does that impact our performances? Well, if we say I'm nervous, then it can make it feel like there's nothing we can do about those nerves. There's no solution. If we say I'm feeling nervous, then for me that naturally leads to the idea of, what can I do about that? Is there something I can do to make myself feel better? Because I think we implicitly acknowledge the idea that when we phrase something as a feeling, it is transitory. Our feelings don't stay the same all the time. And when we say I am, then it doesn't feel transitory. It feels existential. It feels like it says something about our very being. So have a think about your emotions. And be cautious and have a think about phrasing. Hi, Rachel. Thank you for saying hi and letting me know there are people out there. Phrase it as a feeling and then observe what happens to your feelings about that feeling. And that's the really interesting thing about humans. We can have thoughts about our thoughts. We can step back from our thoughts, step back from our feelings and observe them. And then we can, because we can do that, we can then observe what things we try and do to shift or change our feelings, what effect they have, and whether it does change our feelings. So we can apply this to the piece itself. When I did my 5-day challenge, it was really interesting. I get people to have a look at their piece and how they feel about their piece. And sometimes when we do that, and we acknowledge that we have emotions about a piece, because sometimes we don't realize we have emotions about a piece, and then we say, well, it makes me feel this, and it makes me feel that. Again, does it make you feel, or does it trigger that emotion in you? Again, caution around the language is interesting. And then you can go, okay, that's interesting. I wonder why that bit is triggering that emotion in me, and that I feel this when I'm singing it. It doesn't make me sad, but it makes me feel sadness. Again, that idea of putting that word feel. It's a bit like the power of yet, and some of you will have heard me, and there's a blog on my website about the power of yet. That idea of when you say I can't do something, how different does it feel when we put the word yet at the end of that sentence? I can't do that yet. It transforms it. Again, with that idea of feeling, I am sad. I'm feeling sad. That idea of, it gives it that temporary nature, that idea that that might change. I'm feeling sad right now, but in an hour's time, something may have cheered me up and I may be feeling happy. And it separates us. And if we can do that around our performance and feel that that feeling we have, if it's a negative feeling, is transitory, and it may change and it may grow and it may disappear and it may do all sorts of things. And that idea, once we focus on that temporary nature of it, it opens up the possibility of doing something to change how we feel. And it empowers us to realize that our emotions aren't fixed. They aren't part of who we are. They are just something we are feeling at that moment because of all those triggers out there that may be triggering us one way or the other, that may come from a history that we have of being triggered that way. And once we understand that they are temporary and they don't define who we are, so Rachel, so it's a transforming statement to oneself. It's a transforming statement to labeling it as a feeling. So when we label it as a feeling, as opposed to yes, a negative static idea. So as opposed to this as saying something about the nature of us, I am sad. And if we label it as a feeling, then it's easier to recognize that it is temporary. And it is also easier to recognize that we have power to change our feelings by changing our perspective, by changing our position, by changing our situation, by making changes of all sorts of different varieties. We have the capacity to change our feelings. So, but in that way, we can change our emotions about a performance, we can change our emotions about a piece, we can reperspective it, and we can do this. And what I'm saying today is that idea of just acknowledging and remembering to use the language of feelings around our feelings can help us take that empowering step. Thank you for listening. I will be here the same time next week, and I look forward to seeing you. Take care. Bye-bye.